Don't quit before God's move. Don't walk away when heaven is working quietly behind the scenes. Many people give up not because God has failed, but because they quit too soon. There are moments when silence feels like abandonment, when prayers seem unanswered, doors stay closed, and strength feels drained. But silence does not mean absence. God often works his greatest miracles in the unseen, in the waiting, in the pressure, and in the delay. Right before God moves, things often feel hardest. Faith is tested. Hope feels fragile. The struggle intensifies. That is not a sign to quit. It is often a sign that breakthrough is near. The enemy fights hardest when he knows God is about to act. If you quit now, you may miss the very moment God is preparing to step in. You may be standing one prayer away, one act of obedience away, one moment of endurance away from the answer you've been crying for. God's timing is not slow, it is precise. He is aligning people, shaping your character, strengthening your faith, and preparing you for what you asked for. If he gave it too early, it could break you. If he delayed, it's because he loves you enough to prepare you fully. So hold on, stay faithful. Keep praying when it's hard. Keep trusting when it doesn't make sense. Keep standing when quitting feels easier. There are seasons in life when it feels like nothing is happening. You pray, you wait, you believe, and yet there is no visible change, no open doors, no clear answers. This silence can be confusing and emotionally exhausting, especially when you are doing everything you know to do in faith. But God's silence is not the same as God's absence. Just because you cannot hear him does not mean he is not working. God often does his greatest work behind the scenes, like seeds growing underground. There is activity happening long before anything breaks through the surface. Roots must grow deep before fruit can appear. In the same way, God is developing strength, faith, patience, and wisdom in you before he reveals the breakthrough you are waiting for. What you see as delay is often divine preparation. A silence is also a test of trust. It reveals whether your faith is based on constant reassurance or on deep belief in God's character. When God is quiet, he is teaching you to walk by faith and not by sight. He is stretching your ability to trust him even when there is no immediate confirmation that he is listening. Many people walk away during silent seasons because they mistake quietness for rejection. But throughout history, God has always moved in silence first. He prepared Joseph in prison before the palace. He shaped David in the fields before the throne. He allowed Jesus to remain hidden for years before revealing his purpose. The silence was not punishment, it was preparation. When God is silent, he is aligning circumstances, changing hearts, opening paths you cannot see, and protecting you from outcomes you are not ready for. He knows exactly when to speak and when to act. His timing is intentional, not careless. If you quit during the silent season, you may miss the moment when God reveals what he has been building all along. The silence is not the end of the story. It is the foundation. There is a pattern that repeats itself throughout life and throughout faith. Right before God moves, the pressure intensifies. What was already difficult suddenly feels unbearable. Strength feels low, hope feels stretched, and quitting begins to look like relief. This is not coincidence. It is often the final stretch before divine intervention. When God is preparing to act, opposition often increases. The enemy does not fight what is already defeated, and he does not resist what is going nowhere. Resistance rises when progress is near. That is why many people experience their darkest moments just before a breakthrough. The struggle intensifies because something is about to change. Hard moments strip away comfort and force reliance on God alone. They expose where your trust truly lies. When you reach the point where your own strength is no longer enough, you become positioned for God's strength to take over. Divine intervention often happens when human effort runs out so that God alone gets the glory. These intense seasons are also refining moments. Pressure reveals character, fire purifies. God allows difficulty not to destroy you, but to strengthen you, mature you, and prepare you for what comes next. If the pressure were lighter, the growth would be smaller. If the challenge were easier, the reward would be limited. Many people misinterpret hardship as a sign that God has left them. In reality, it is often proof that God is closer than ever. He allows the storm not to sink you, but to show you that he still has authority over it. The moment you feel like you cannot take another step may be the moment God steps in. Walking away during the hardest moments can delay what perseverance would unlock. Endurance is not about comfort. It is about position. Those who stay faithful under pressure often witness God's power in ways others never do. There is a specific timing attached to every promise God gives. It is not random and it is not flexible to human impatience. God's appointed time is when everything is aligned and your readiness, the circumstances, the people involved, and the purpose behind the blessing. Quitting early can remove you from that moment of alignment. Many people stop just short of breakthrough because they grow tired of waiting. They pray faithfully for a season, remain obedient for a while, and trust God until the pressure lasts longer than expected. But faith that lasts only until discomfort arrives is not endurance. God often asks for persistence because staying power keeps you positioned for what he has already planned. God's timing is rarely revealed in advance. You are not told how close you are, how many steps remain, or how near the answer truly is. That uncertainty is intentional. It forces you to rely on trust rather than timelines. When you quit early, you step out of the process before the promise reaches its moment of fulfillment. Quitting also interrupts growth. The waiting season is not wasted time. It is shaping time. God is strengthening discipline, deepening character, and refining faith. Walking away too soon means abandoning the varying development that qualifies you to handle the blessing when it arrives. What you are waiting for may be ready, but you may not be fully prepared yet. There are moments when obedience feels unrewarded and perseverance feels invisible. But God keeps precise record of every step of faith. Nothing is forgotten, nothing is overlooked. When the appointed time arrives, the reward often comes suddenly, unexpectedly, and completely. Those who remain faithful do not just receive answers. They witness timing that proves God's wisdom. Quitting early may bring temporary relief, but staying positioned allows you to experience the fullness of what God intended all along. One of the greatest misunderstandings in faith is assuming that a delay means God has said no. When answers don't come quickly, when doors remain closed, and when progress feels slow, it is easy to believe you've been overlooked or forgotten, but delay does not mean denial. It often means that God is preparing something and someone more carefully than you realize. God understands the weight of what you are asking for. He knows the responsibility, the pressure, and the maturity required to handle it. If he released certain blessings too early, they could damage you instead of help you. Delay protects you from receiving something before you are ready to sustain it. What feels like waiting is often God strengthening your foundation. A preparation happens in layers. God works on your mindset, your patience, your discernment, and your character before he changes your circumstances. While you are focused on the outcome, God is focused on who you are becoming. The delay allows him to remove weaknesses that would collapse under the blessing and to develop strength that can support it. Delay also allows alignment. Other people must be positioned, circumstances must shift, and timing must line up according to God's greater plan. What you are waiting on may involve more than just you. God's preparation often extends beyond your view, arranging things in ways you could not control or predict. During delay, faith is refined. Trust deepens when there is nothing visible to hold on to. You learn to rely on God's character instead of constant results. The waiting season stretches your endurance and teaches you obedience without immediate reward. What feels like God holding back is often God building up. The delay is not punishment, it is protection. It is God making sure that when the answer arrives, it brings growth instead of destruction, peace instead of pressure, and purpose instead of regret. Faith reaches its deepest level when logic runs out. when situations contradict what you believe, when evidence opposes your prayers, and when outcomes seem unlikely, that is where true faith is revealed. Anyone can believe when things are working. Faith is proven when nothing around you supports what you are trusting God for. There are seasons when obedience feels unreasonable and trust feels risky. You may be doing the right things and still experiencing setbacks. Prayers may feel unanswered, progress may seem reversed, and clarity may be absent. These moments expose whether your faith is rooted in results or in your confidence in God's nature. God often allows circumstances that challenge understanding because faith is not built on explanations. If everything made sense, faith would not be necessary. God invites you to trust Him beyond your reasoning, beyond your emotions, and beyond visible evidence. This kind of trust matures faith and strength and spiritual endurance. When circumstances don't make sense, doubt becomes loud. Questions arise. The fear tries to take control. But faith does not require the absence of doubt. It requires the decision to trust God in spite of it. Choosing faith in confusing moments is an act of courage, not weakness. These seasons also refine dependence. When you cannot rely on plans, people, or predictions, you learn to rely fully on God. Faith becomes less about outcomes and more about relationship. You begin to trust not just what God can do, but who He is. God honors faith that stands firm in uncertainty. What you cannot understand now is often part of a larger picture that will make sense later. Trusting God when circumstances don't make sense keeps you anchored when everything else feels unstable. Much of God's work happens beyond human visibility. While you focus on what is missing or delayed, God is arranging details that are hidden from your view. He is positioning people, shifting circumstances, opening paths, and closing others, all in ways that cannot be measured in the moment. What looks like stillness on the surface is often movement underneath. God's alignment operates on a larger scale than personal desire. What you are waiting for may involve other people's decisions, growth, healing, or readiness. God works across time, hearts, and situations simultaneously. Alignment takes time because every piece must fit together according to His purpose, not just your preference. There are moments when nothing appears to change, yet God is redirecting outcomes you could not foresee. He may be protecting you from doors that look good but would lead to harm. He may be delaying something because a better opportunity is being prepared. The unseen alignment is often an act of mercy as much as preparation. God also aligns you internally while He aligns circumstances externally. Your perspective, maturity, patience, and discernment are being shaped. He is making sure that when the opportunity arrives, you recognize it and handle it wisely. Internal alignment matters just as much as external progress. Trust is required when alignment is invisible. Faith grows when you believe that God is working even without evidence. The unseen nature of God's preparation forces you to rely on His character rather than constant reassurance. This trust deepens your relationship with Him. Many breakthroughs feel sudden when they arrive, but they are rarely sudden in preparation. What appears to happen overnight is often the result of long, unseen alignment. God is arranging details you cannot see, but every one of them is intentional and purposeful. The season you are in right now may feel overwhelming, confusing, or unfair, but it is not meaningless. Every struggle you face is shaping a story that will one day speak louder than ever could. God does not waste pain. He transforms it into purpose and turns trials into testimony. Struggle exposes weaknesses, but it also reveals strength you did not know you had. When you are pushed beyond what feels manageable, you discover endurance, faith, and resilience that only develop under pressure. These qualities cannot be learned in ease. They are forged through difficulty. What you survive now is building the foundation for who you will become. Your testimony is not just about the victory. It is about the process, the waiting, the doubt, the tears, the perseverance. People are moved not only by success, but by honesty. When God brings you through, your story will resonate with others who are still in the middle of their struggle. Your experience will give hope to those who feel alone. God allows you to walk through challenges so that you can later walk others through theirs. The comfort you receive becomes the comfort you offer. The lessons you learn become wisdom you share. Your pain becomes a bridge that connects you to others in a way success alone never could. Struggle also refines humility. It reminds you that progress is not achieved by strength alone, but by grace. When breakthrough comes, you will recognize that it was not your ability that sustained you. It was God's faithfulness. What feels like survival right now is actually preparation for impact. Your current struggle is writing a story that will one day speak of endurance, faith, and the power of God to carry someone through what they thought would break them. One of the greatest struggles in faith is learning to trust God's timing. Human nature wants quick answers, immediate results, and visible progress. When God does not move according to our expectations, it can feel like delay, neglect, or even rejection. But God's timing operates on purpose, not pressure. What feels late to you is often perfectly aligned in God's plan. God sees the full picture while you only see the moment you are in. He knows what must happen before the answer arrives, what needs to change within you, and what circumstances must align around you. His timing considers every detail, your readiness, the impact on others, and the long-term outcome. Nothing is rushed and nothing is accidental. When God waits, it is because something essential is still being developed. He may be strengthening your faith, correcting your perspective, or removing hidden weaknesses that could hinder what you are praying for. Timing is not about delay. It is about readiness. God will not release something that you are not prepared to carry. Perfect timing also protects you. An early answer might bring unnecessary struggle, confusion, or harm. What you think you need now may not benefit you yet. God's timing ensures that when the door opens, you are able to walk through it with wisdom, stability, and strength. Impatience often causes people to move ahead of God, forcing outcomes he never intended. But rushing ahead can create burdens that obedience would have avoided. Waiting keeps you aligned with God's will rather than your own urgency. God has never missed an appointed moment. Every promise is fulfilled at the right time, in the right way. What you are waiting for is not forgotten. It is scheduled according to divine precision, not human urgency. Spiritual resistance often increases when God is preparing to move. The enemy does not waste effort on what is already defeated or going nowhere. He fights hardest when he senses that a breakthrough is near. That sudden rise in pressure, confusion, fear, or discouragement is often a signal that something is about to shift. When God is about to act, doubt becomes louder and temptation becomes stronger. Negative thoughts intensify, old struggles resurface, and unexpected obstacles appear. The goal of this resistance is not just to slow you down, but to wear you out emotionally so that you quit before God steps in. The enemy understands that endurance keeps you positioned for God's move. Resistance also targets your faith. It tries to make you question what God has spoken, whether your prayers matter, and whether your effort is worth it. These attacks are meant to disconnect you from trust and push you into discouragement. The enemy knows that if he can weaken your faith, he can delay what obedience would unlock. Many people misinterpret resistance as failure, assuming that opposition means they are on the wrong path. In reality, resistance often confirms that you are moving in the right direction. Doors don't shake unless something is trying to stop what is coming through them. Opposition is often evidence that God's purpose is active. God allows resistance not to defeat you, but to strengthen you. Each moment you stand firm builds spiritual endurance and sharpens discernment. You learn to rely less on feelings and more on faith. What the enemy intends to stop you often becomes the very thing that proves God's power. Understanding this truth changes how you respond to pressure. Instead of quitting when resistance increases, you recognize it as a sign to stand stronger. The battle intensifies because God's move is closer than it appears. Waiting is one of the hardest tests of faith, yet is one of the most transformative seasons in life. When God asks you to wait, He is not delaying your blessing arbitrarily. He is refining your character and strengthening the foundations of your faith. Waiting seasons challenge patience, reveal weaknesses, and force you to confront fears and doubts that would otherwise remain hidden. During waiting, you learn self-discipline and perseverance. You discover that true faith is not measured by how loudly you pray or how quickly you see results, but by how steadfastly you trust God when the outcome is uncertain. Each day you remain patient. Each moment you choose trust over anxiety, you grow stronger and more resilient. Waiting also deepens dependence on God. In the absence of immediate answers or visible progress, you are compelled to lean on His promises, His wisdom, and His timing. You start to internalize that your strength alone is insufficient and that divine guidance is essential. This reliance transforms your faith from surface level belief into a deep-rooted trust that can withstand trials. Character is refined in the waiting because patience is developed under pressure. The frustration, doubt, and temptation you encounter during these seasons are intentional tools used by God to teach humility, perseverance, and resilience. He is shaping you into someone who can handle more than just the blessing. You are being molded to handle responsibility, influence, and the impact of God's move. Waiting seasons also teach discernment. As you pause, reflect, and trust rather than rush, you learn to distinguish between what aligns with God's will and what satisfies temporary desires. Your decisions become more thoughtful, your actions more purposeful, and your heart more attuned to God's timing and direction. Finally, the lessons learned during waiting remain long after the waiting ends. The trust built in the unseen, the patience cultivated in the silence, and the character strengthened in the trials become permanent traits. When God finally moves, you are ready not just to receive, but to steward, honor, and maximize the blessings He provides. Obedience is the bridge between prayer and promise, between faith and fulfillment. Every step you take in alignment with God's will positions you for the blessings He has prepared. But when you give up prematurely, you break that bridge and delay what could have been unlocked through faithful perseverance. Quitting doesn't just stop your progress, it interrupts God's plan for your life. Obedience often requires action, even when it is difficult, inconvenient, or uncomfortable. It may mean continuing to pray when answers seem absent, maintaining integrity when shortcuts appear tempting, or persevering in your purpose even when results are delayed. Each act of obedience builds momentum for God to move. When you give up, the momentum stops and the timing of blessings is affected. God often sets conditions for His blessings that involve preparation, patience, and faithful action. What you do during the waiting period matters. Small acts of faithfulness, serving others, staying consistent, remaining honest, or continuing in prayer lay the groundwork for breakthroughs. If you quit, you remove yourself from the process and potentially miss the fullness of what your obedience could have unlocked. Giving up also hinders growth. Every challenge you endure while remaining obedient strengthens your character, teaches perseverance, and develops spiritual insight. These lessons are essential to handle what God is about to release. Quitting early robs you not only of the blessing, but of the growth that comes with faithfully walking the path. Obedience is also relational. Your consistent faithfulness impacts others and aligns circumstances in ways you may never see. God often uses your actions to influence people, open doors, and orchestrate events in the background. Walking away prematurely disrupts the alignment He has been carefully establishing. The path of obedience is rarely easy, but it is always productive. Every trial faced with patience, every step taken in faith, and every act of trust sets the stage for God's move. Quitting interrupts the trajectory, but perseverance unlocks doors that may otherwise remain closed. A faithful obedience is not just about following instructions, it is about trusting that God's wisdom is greater than your understanding. Giving up delays not only the manifestation of your request, but also the full impact of God's plan for your life, which often far exceeds what you could have imagined. As we come to the close, I want to remind you of one simple yet powerful truth. God's timing is perfect, and His plan for your life is greater than anything you could imagine. Every delay, every struggle, every moment that feels unbearable is not a sign of abandonment. It is a sign of preparation. Do not quit now. Do not walk away when God is working behind the scenes. The breakthrough you are waiting for is closer than you think. Your prayers, your faith, your obedience, they are not wasted. They are building the foundation for the miracle that is about to unfold. Hold on, stand firm, trust in the unseen, for God is aligning circumstances, strengthening your character, and orchestrating events in ways you cannot yet comprehend. The storm you are in is temporary. The waiting is purposeful, and the resistance you face is proof that something extraordinary is coming. When God moves, it will exceed your expectations. Every tear will be rewarded. Every moment of doubt will be replaced with certainty, and every struggle become part of your testimony. You will look back and realize that giving up would have robbed you of the very blessing you were about to receive. So rise up in faith. Continue to pray, continue to believe, and continue to walk in obedience. God is moving, and your breakthrough is on the horizon. Remember, don't quit before God's move. The best is yet to come.